Live on Jimmy Dore, ladies and gentlemen.
Hi, everybody. Welcome. I'm here with Kurt Mexican. We have Thomas Massie coming up in 20 minutes. So let me get to this real fast. Establishment shill Ryan Grimm from from Breaking Points, which we tenderly refer to them as broken points. Now they're just establishment talking points. Because he interviewed listen what it said. He interviewed a Iranian protester who's obviously a Mossad agent. Of course.
Ryan, at least jerk off while you're
At least do
it.
this while you're interviewing. So here, I just want to give it to you. This is for the Drop Site News, which I'm pretty sure is still funded by the same billionaire who funded the Intercept, and Glenn Greenwald got forced out for trying to tell the truth over there. Anyway, rare interview with Iran protester and crackdown. That's what they call it. Ryan Grimm speaks with a woman who marched in Tehran on Thursday, January 8th. She was visiting to spend time with family.
In Iran right now?
Yes. She told Dropsite she is not part of any professional activist network. The woman described, oh, well, that's all you need then. She said so.
If you're Mossad, you got to tell me.
Yeah. Yeah, that's right. Yeah. The woman described the march as massive and nearly unprecedented size and said it faced little resistance from security forces, though reports elsewhere in the city suggest clashes did turn violent. A second march followed on Friday. Her friend saw people fall from gunfire, though she did not witness it herself. On Saturday, authorities sent text messages warning the public that another demonstration would be met with force. Saturday was, I don't think I'll ever forget Saturday, she said. After the massacre, Tehran went quiet. Iran's supreme leader Ayatollah Al-Khamenei said today that several thousand people were killed in the protests. One protest, you know who was doing that? It was the Mossad agents. They're killing cops, they're killing protesters, they're killing everybody.
Like in Tiananmen Square, the Soros NGO that caused the violence trying to provoke police, and they avoided it until they absolutely had to do something. And we know that's true from WikiLeaks.
One protester who had spent last month in Iran and has participated in she spent last month in Iran, and has participated in previous rounds of protests, agreed to sit down for an interview with Dropsite on the condition that we protect her identity, because she's Mossad.
No one goes to Iran for a month to engage in protests. What? I mean, Ryan, so he does know. Ryan does know this.
Of course.
Yeah.
We reviewed the documents and verified other elements of her account where we could. including with footage she and her friends took at the marches. Much of the footage, some of which is included in the interview, shows overturned dumpsters and tires set aflame. Yeah, you know who set those on fire? Mossad agents. The Financial Times report, that's why it's so easy to outdo these guys, because guys like Ryan Grimm are bought off by the establishment. You saw it I saw it firsthand during Force to Vote when he protected politicians and slandered healthcare activists, and he got ratioed by NFL football players over it for lying.
And I suspected when he wrote a book about the squad, as if that was a thing.
That's right. Yeah, as if that's even
what tipped me off.
Yeah.
The squad.
So much of the footage, some of which, so the Financial Times reported that witnesses to the uprising observed groups of black-clad, well-organized men going from dumpster to dumpster, setting them on fire. The woman interviewed did not see that directly. Videos of the uprising, as well as the testimony reported by Financial Times, also show armed agitators firing into crowds and at security services. Her account does not claim to be comprehensive. No single account could be. People are ripping him to shreds on Twitter over this.
It's kind of a giveaway, you know?
Yeah, so they highlight this. Yeah, one protester who spent last month in Iran. Yeah, spend 1 month there to protest. Smells like Mossad, and this article smells like Hasbara. That's what this is. That's what this is. Because we've already covered this. Iran protesters are Mossad CIA infiltrated to cause violence and give the war machine cover to bomb and go to Iran and turn it into a failed state, just like they did in Iraq, Libya, Syria, Ukraine, etc. Don't fall for it. So we've already covered this. Everybody knows this, except apparently Ryan Grimm. Of course he knows it. But what he does is, it's just like the CIA. They'll give you 1 or 2 or 3 articles that are nailing it, and they'll build up your trust in them so they can give you the pro-war propaganda.
And by the way, Jimmy, I don't want to point out, maybe I don't think I'm particularly bright. The discernment to know when they're doing it is really easy. Because you'll always be able to pick it out because they'll want to push for war. Yeah. So every time someone wants to push for war, they're a bad actor and a piece of shit. And that's that simple.
Look at how these getting ripped on Twitter. Lame Hasbara. Real cut below the reporting I've come to expect from Dropside. So DSN is now going full Mossad. That's Dropside News. Thanks. Duly noted. Thank you for finding Mossad agents to speak with. He's completely getting ratioed, crushed. Here's Jackson the Hair Hinkle says Ryan Grimm has always been and will forever be a Zioslop tool of the Democratic Party. Patrick Henningsen says, what? The way the government of Iran has responded to protests, every single person in Iran would happily join any intelligence service to end this regime. This is straight up U.S.-Israeli messaging. So he's quoting what I guess the person says in the interview. The way the government of Iran has responded to the protests, every single person in Iran would happily join any intelligence service to end this regime. Really? That's straight up U.S.
Every single person? I find that hard to believe.
He says a seriously dumb statement when you consider the fact that over 2 million Iranians came out just last week in Tehran in support of their government, as well as millions more in other cities supporting the Iranian government.
By the way, I don't support the Iranian government. I don't really give a shit about them. I know they probably have a grudge against America and what America wants for them.
Maybe because we overthrew their country and installed a dictator?
Oh, America and Israel installed the Ayatollah, assholes. The Shah wasn't corrupt enough for Zbigniew Brzezinski and the rest of the trilaterals, so they installed the Ayatollah. So that's America's fault that it's like that. And I'm sure Iranians know that because every time I meet someone from Iran, they bring it up to me.
I've heard that but we definitely installed the Shah and overthrew the Iranian president Mossadegh in 1953. The United States did. And then installed the Shah, which was an oppressive dictator. The United States loves oppressive dictators. Don't let anybody tell you different. That's why right now Trump is welcoming the head of Al-Qaeda, the head chopper from Al-Qaeda, to the White House because he's running Syria. That's right.
The protesters in his country, the guy we installed, slaughtered all of them like pigs, all the Christians.
There he is.
But hey, stop hurting Christians in Nigeria.
I go back to him getting ripped. You should really refrain from making yourselves available for this kind of effery. No dissident speaks with the discipline and reassurance of an intelligence officer, using carefully planned talking points and ideas. It is quite ridiculously obvious.
Is the person still in Iran and that's why they're speaking? Or are they supposedly back here? Because they're back here, why would they have to be anonymous? That makes no sense.
Right, that doesn't, right? Showing your real colors. Seems Iran was a litmus test after all. Drop site news unfollowed. Breaking points unfollowed. Shilling for the Zionist empire. That's exactly right.
You know, I'm genuinely surprised by this.
I should have known better. Breaking points, Sagar being anti-Maduro, that dumb Vogel fry. I don't want to get into personal attacks.
Home haircut, homeschool, the partner to home haircut, aka Ryan Grimm.
That's right.
Homeschool, home haircut.
This is the fall of drop site, says David Raffner. Visiting family. Ha ha. Ryan Grimm speaks with the Mossad agent who says she marched in Tehran on Thursday, January 8th. She was visiting to spend time with family. She told drop site she's not Mossad CIA agent. So that's all you need. Wow, you all are truly broke. Enjoy that Zio cash. Ryan, I don't see how this fits the bill. Frankly, it reads as misleading, as uncritically echoes that sounds like Mossad Hasbara. You may want to seriously consider that you've been played, because this claim doesn't survive even a basic confrontation with the fact that he's not being played. He's trying to play you.
Yeah.
Just like he tried to play you around forced to vote every time he defends the Democratic Party when it counts and politicians over activists, which is why Shama Sawant had to tell him, what in the effing F are you saying? Because he was defending politicians during their I think it was the vote over East Palestine. Anyway, it's nonstop. So just like the CIA, they'll get Ryan Grimm, Breaking Points, Drop Site will give you 1, 2, 3 good stories and to set you up for this. That's what this is. Went from drop to flop real quick. This is quite possibly one of the most propagandized interviews I've ever seen on a non-Zio controlled news source. Well, why do you think it's non-Zio controlled?
Well, because I thought Pierre Modry or whoever, but he's PayPal Mafia, isn't he?
I think so. Unfollowing you for this Hasbara article. Drop site, Hasbara, unfollow. Interviewing Iranians from the diaspora is not rare.
Yeah, by the way, I'm surprised at Drop Site. You know, Tim Pool recommended it really highly as unbiased news to me, and that's why I'm really hurt by this betrayal of Drop Site.
The last month, the last month in Iran, that's quote, previous rounds of protests. Did you ask her the name of the tour agency that sponsored people to come to Iran for protests? I'm broke and I want to see the world and be a revolutionary.
And do my birthright trip to Israel also. Can we put them all together? My birthright.
My birthright. This is awesome. This is fantastic. Great job by Ryan Grimm. No matter what you think, right? The guy has already revealed himself to be an establishment shill, will side with the establishment. This is how he gets access. This is called access journalism. This is how he gets access, defending the Democratic Party, basically repeating their press releases for them. That's and then he'll pretend to be against them. That's the game. Mm-hmm. You pretend, oh, look, I'm telling a hard truth. And it only sets you up, just like he when he stole the reporting from the Gray Zone to debunk that lie that the Hamas did all the grapes on October 7th and killed babies. Well, he just hacked that. He hacked their reporting, hacked that reporting from the Gray Zone, and which he privately admits that he did. And so just so they do that, so then they can set you up for this. So this is
buy some goodwill, but see, it's kind of a bad system because this was not a good thing that could have even fooled me, even though I thought he did good on, I guess, those things he got from Gray Zone. It's such an obvious thing. I mean, do you remember during COVID, round of protest? I remember that last round of protests in COVID where they're burning their hijabs that Iran said they don't have to wear anymore, by the way, already. That already happened. And they're wearing COVID masks while they do it.
Hey, just to let you know, over that the whole thing is, I know people who say to me, oh, I watch Breaking Points. I think they're straight news.
Why?
And then if there's such straight news, why did they get everything wrong? Why did they get COVID wrong? Why did she advocate for lockdowns when she was making money off homeschooling things?
Ask her about the vax.
Why'd they get the vax wrong?
Sounds real dumb
Why'd
when
they
she
get
talks
the
about
lockdowns wrong? Why'd they get masks wrong? Why'd they do big pharma propaganda constantly?
They initially got Julian Assange wrong.
Why do you think they tried to discredit Julian Assange? Why do you think that they got the Ukraine war wrong? So they get all this stuff wrong. Because they present as straight. Of course, if they presented as hacks, nobody would watch them, but they present as straight news. That's why he's super boring. That's why he cuts his own hair. Mm-hmm. That's why
most of these people are there to make sure no one effective can get their message out effectively. So that little twerp Fuentes' job is to sabotage people. It's the same version, but with journalism. They want to make sure, like, if any legitimate reporting comes out, only so much, but then it's contained, and then the narrative will come swooping in with we're the adults in the room.
That's
with
right.
The real narrative.
Yeah,
that's the op. It's been going on since Walter Cronkite. Back when you thought the news was good, it also wasn't. It also wasn't.
I know.
Sometimes they get stories right. You just got to look at the story and know. And just pay attention, and then when they advocate this bullshit, you know who's lying to you.
All right, we're going to go to Thomas Massie now.
Oh, yeah. I can't wait to watch this. All right.
Okay. Let's take a break, and we'll be back with our guest. Hey, for decades, our dietary guidelines have pushed low fat, low salt, eat less, while the food supply is filled with chemicals, seed oils, and ultra-processed junk. RFK Jr. just released new dietary guidelines, and it's a major shift. For the first time, the federal government's openly calling out the real driver of chronic disease, ultra-processed food. These guidelines pull America back to real food while warning against the foods that are destroying us, because real damage isn't always visible. The problem is the damage underneath: inflammation, blood sugar instability, hormone disruption, and metabolic dysfunction. And RFK isn't chasing a diet trend. He eats like someone who understands your gut controls your whole system.
Mainly meat and then fermented vegetables, anything fermented. So a lot of kimchi and all kinds of fermented vegetables. And it's really, I would say it's dramatically changed my, everything.
The only issue is that it's not easy to eat kimchi every day. And now you can get all the benefits of kimchi in a convenient daily capsule with Kimchi One. Kimchi One helps restore what modern food destroys, delivering kimchi's unique probiotic strains to strengthen your gut barrier, flush toxins out, and reduce body fat. In a world built on fake food, give your gut real protection. Today, you can get an exclusive offer by clicking the link below for 25% off your entire order. Or for an even better deal, call my friends at Brightcore for up to 50% off your order and free shipping. Give them a call now at 888-253-0418. Hey, welcome back to the live stream. We have special guest Thomas Massie, Republican congressman who has represented Kentucky's 4th congressional district since 2012. Prior to entering Congress, he earned a BS and an MS in engineering at MIT, where he was an award-winning inventor, founder of tech company that developed haptic interface devices. Known for his libertarian-leaning views, Massie's recognized for his advocacy of limited government and fiscal responsibility, as well as for co-leading the bipartisan push for Epstein Files Transparency Act, demanding the full release of documents and calling for a special master to oversee the process due to the DOJ's delays and excessive redactions. Please welcome to the show, Thomas Massie.
Hey, Jimmy, I've been waiting for this for years. I can't believe I'm on your show.
This is fantastic. I just want to do an update on the Epstein file release. A judge has ruled Judge Paul A. Engelmeyer was told in a letter signed by U.S. Attorney Jay Clayton that he must reject a request this week by the congressional co-sponsors of the Epstein Files Transparency Act to appoint a neutral expert. U.S. Rep. Ro Khanna, California Democrat, and Representative Thomas Massie, a Kentucky Republican, say they have, quote, urgent and grave concerns about the slow release of only a small number of millions of documents that began last month. In the filing to the judge, they said they believed criminal violations have taken place in the release process. Clayton, though, said Khanna and Massie do not have standing with the court that would allow them to seek the extraordinary relief of the appointment of a special master and an independent. But here's the thing that I find crazy. The judge, Engelmeyer, lacks the authority to grant such a request, he said, particularly because the congressional representative who made the request are not parties to the criminal case that led to Maxwell's December 21. So, but they did admit that that the Department of Justice is committing a crime by not releasing this. So go ahead, take it where you would like.
Yeah, so the judge asked the DOJ and Ro Khanna and myself to respond to him, and we have until tomorrow to respond. So we're glad to see the DOJ's response. We have our own response prepared. You know, we never did claim in our letter that we had standing. This is an amici, which is a friend of the court, where we give our opinion. You know, congressmen often do this. They write in on certain cases. And it would be up to the judge, obviously, whether he wants to appoint the special master or not. We think it would best serve the victims in the case that he heard, which was the Maxwell case. And so the victims have standing, and they could get more closure. They would be better served by a special master to oversee the release of these files. And so that's going to be, I think, the thrust of what we respond to Judge Engelmeyer with. And this ain't over yet. We have so many arrows in our quiver to compel the DOJ to follow the damn law. I mean, this is the problem you have. They say we don't have standing, and the problem is, with the DOJ, they're the ones who are supposed to enforce the law. And if they're not enforcing the law, then you are kind of in a quandary. And that's why we're asking this judge to get involved.
So you even said that Pam Bondi should be called to testify in the House Judiciary Committee and the House Oversight Committee, where she must answer for her failure to comply with the Epstein Files Transparency Act. It's unusual that she's never appeared in front of the House. Why hasn't she?
Well, you know, out of tradition or just the congressional job, our job is oversight. The AG always shows up at least once a year, or typically once a year, in front of the House of Representatives and the Senate. Now, Pam Bondi appeared before the Senate Judiciary Committee, but conveniently, when she was supposed to appear before the House Judiciary Committee, of which I'm a member, there was a shutdown. And we could have kept having hearings, but Mike Johnson, some people think, in order to keep the 218th signer to the discharge petition that Ro Khanna and I were leading, to keep her from being sworn in, Mike Johnson said, well, there's a shutdown. You know what? Let's just close Congress down too. So we didn't have hearings during that period of time. So her hearing was punted, her schedule to appear. But I don't want to flip any conspiracy bits here tonight. But they scheduled her now for February 11th, I'm told, by the chairman of the committee, Jim Jordan. And I appreciate that, but there's a shutdown deadline looming on January 31st, or I believe it is. And if January has 31 days, I should know, I guess.
It doesn't.
Okay, and then it's January 30th. You know,
okay.
The only day I care about in January is the 13th. That's my birthday. But anyways, let's put it this way. On February 1st at 12:01 midnight, there could be a shutdown. And if that shutdown is prolonged through the 11th, she won't have to testify again. Hopefully she will testify, because I'm on that committee. I get to ask her questions for 5 minutes.
That would be fantastic. just for the ridiculousness. I mean, I'm sure I get a lot of comedy clips out of that in 5 minutes. That'd be fantastic. But you also go on to talk about the Clintons. You say the Clintons think they're above the law, but they're not. They must comply with congressional subpoenas and appear before the House of Representatives or face arrest, conviction, and incarceration. I suspect they've observed Bondi's lack of resolve and have decided to test it. So you're trying to get them to, and so they're ignoring the subpoenas? Is that what's happening?
They're ignoring the subpoena. Now, that's the Oversight Committee. I served on that committee, I think, for 6 or 8 years. I'm no longer on it. That's Jamie Comer's the chairman, and he has compelled them in a bipartisan subpoena to come and testify. And I think what's going on here, Jimmy, is a negotiation. I think when push comes to shove, if Pam Bondi has the resolve to do what they did to Steve Bannon and Peter Navarro, which is to arrest them for not showing up and testifying, I think they'll say, okay. Oh, you really meant it? Well, yeah, we'll show up, but we want a cushy chair. We don't want to have to be there for more than 30 minutes. And, here's our favorite drink. We'd like that to be served. Like, they may try to extract, and this sometimes happens, some kind of special treatment to show up. I don't know. But I do think they will eventually show up, and they can do what everybody does that shows up that doesn't want to be there. They can plead the fifth. I mean, but here's the thing, Jimmy. Why not just release the damn files? If the Clintons are guilty, it'll be in the files, right? That's where the evidence is. If they were thinking about indicting Clintons, that'll be in the draft prosecutions and in the draft indictments and the prosecutorial notes. If one of the victims says that they got, sexually assaulted by Bill Clinton, that'll be in the 302 files, the forms that the FBI fills out after they interview the victims. All of those things I've just mentioned are things that Pam Bondi has on her desk that she hasn't even redacted and released yet. Those need to be released. And then that's where the facts are. You think Bill Clinton's going to show up and incriminate himself? I don't think so. It's not going to happen. So if people really, and by the way, I think when the Republicans are going after the Clintons and the Democrats are going after Trump, those are distractions. I think the folks in these files that were clients of Jeffrey Epstein are billionaires. I think they are, for the most part, apolitical people. Once you get to the Epstein class, you go to all the parties. They're not partisan parties, and you give to all the candidates in case one of them wins. So I think the real criminals here are not Bill Clinton and Donald Trump. I think we're going to find out it's some of these billionaires who really are out of the public eye. There may be scholarships named after them. They may have their names on buildings, and those may change once these files come out.
So how do we get some of those people in front of the committee? How come we haven't had like the Lex Westman called in front of a committee? Why, with the people we know who are involved, right? What is that going to happen, and why hasn't it happened?
Well, it should happen. And Jess Staley is one of the names that the victims gave to me that I read in front of Kash Patel to see if I could get any kind of reading there, because he said there was no evidence in the possession of the government that anybody but Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell mistreated people. And so that's when I said, well, that's interesting, because these survivors tell me they've given you all at least 20 names, and you wrote them down when they gave you the names. Have you looked at the 302 forms? And that's when Kash Patel admitted he himself has not looked at the 302 forms. And I'm like, well, then how can you sit here and say there's no evidence if you haven't even looked at the most obvious place to look for the evidence? That was in the hearing where he did show up. And I described the professions of these people, of 19 of the 20 people that the survivors tell me exist. Now, while we're here and we're talking about it, I get this question on the internet by trolls and paid accounts and whatever. They're like, you said you were going to release the 20 names that you have. You said you have 20 names. How come you haven't released them? Okay, the survivors said that they were compiling names, And Marjorie Taylor Greene and I offered that if they wanted to give us those names and they wanted us to read them on the floor of the House, we would do it. But here's the reason why we shouldn't do that. Number one, we got the law passed. It's now Pam Bondi's job to do it, right? It's not my job to go to the floor of the House and do this. That's a backup plan. But if you name the 20 people, then they can go through all these millions of pages of files they're going to release, and they can unredact those 20, but there may be 20 more that they never have to admit there are because they know the ones you know, right? So this is our check. That list of people is our check on whether they have actually released the files properly, and all of the files. That's another reason you wouldn't want to go there. And then also, if you read the names on the floor, the other way that DOJ could play it is to say, oh, well, I don't know what you're talking about. And those people never get prosecuted. So it's Pam Bondi's. We won this fight. This was the largest uphill battle. That when you pass a bill that the Speaker of the House doesn't want passed, that the Majority Leader in the Senate doesn't want passed, that the President doesn't want passed, when you figure out a way to get that bill to the floor, and then you get a vote of 427-1 in the House and 100-0 in the Senate, and then you get Donald Trump to sign a bill that he said would have been a hostile act to even sign the discharge petition to bring the bill for a vote. I guess he committed a hostile act with his Sharpie to himself when he signed it. But when you get all that done, you've won. Like, it's literally, they have a law in front of them that they have to follow now.
So they're not following it. And what do you, I don't want to be a wet blanket, but I don't think we're ever going to see those files because the people who actually pull the strings and run things don't want them. And the people who are the puppet masters of Congress and Donald Trump, right? So Donald Trump brags about being bought by Miriam Adelson and Sheldon Adelson, and that he does their bidding. He brags about it on camera. This isn't me. This isn't conjecture. This is him admitting it. And so he's completely owned by the Zionists. And so so to me, it's like that's what they're doing. They're trying to cover this up because it would expose the Mossad working with Jeffrey Epstein at the behest of Israel, and then they'd lose all that compromat that they have on everybody. They have all the blackmail on everyone, and it would all be worthless. And so just what is your, I mean, you did get this bill passed. It is law, but as we've seen, if there's nobody to enforce the law, then nothing happens. So what do you think is eventually going to happen?
When you're talking about the U.S. government, I don't think the blanket can be wet enough. So I don't blame you for being a wet blanket. Look, it's like the old Nintendo games where you beat the final boss, you beat Bowser at the castle, and they say, oh, the princess is in another castle. You got to do it all over again. And we've done that with subpoenas over the years and congressional testimonies, and they say, I'm not prepared to answer that question today. And so finally we did something that is unprecedented in the history of our country. We passed a law to compel them to release the files. Now, I would say this. The people who did Watergate and the people who did Iran-Contra, they thought they were never going to get caught either. And I think this ranks up there in history. When we look back on this, to Iran-Contra, I think you have properly identified the motivations of the rich and powerful people who do not want these files released. I think it implicates our own government, our own DOJ, our own CIA, just in many of the same ways that Iran-Contra did, or like Watergate implicated the president and the people surrounding him. I think it's on that order of magnitude. I do think we'll eventually get to the truth, and here's why. If Bill and Hillary Clinton, if they could outweight Jamie Comer, if they could get to January 3rd of next year, which is only about 11 months away, without ever coming in front of Congress, guess what? They can never be convicted for not appearing because that subpoena expires at the end of Congress. And if the Democrats take the majority, they're not going to reissue the subpoena. So the problem goes away. Just like it did with Eric Holder and with numerous other people, the problem goes away at the end of every Congress. It does not go away with the Epstein files, Transparency Act, because it's a law. Like, we didn't put an expiration date. Like, this bill expires on 2028. no, this bill is forever. And Pam Bondi and Todd Blanche and the other people who are working on this for Pam Bondi, they are running afoul of the law right now. And I would like to remind them, this is not a subpoena. It doesn't expire at the end of Congress. You can't wait this out. And what could happen is the next attorney general could prosecute this attorney general or the people who work for her. And then also, impeachment is on the table. It would be hard to achieve in the House right now, although Pam Bondi is probably the least popular person in the president's cabinet right now, even among Republicans. It would be hard to impeach her, but that could happen later. The other arrows that we have in the quiver, one of them is contempt. The problem with contempt is if you vote and you get the majority of Congress to declare contempt, or some chairman declares contempt, and it gets referred to the DOJ, and then the DOJ is not going to find themselves in contempt. They're not going to prosecute that. But there's another level called inherent contempt. This is a power that the judicial branch has, and the Supreme Court has recognized that Congress has this power too, although Congress hasn't used it in about 85 years, and that is you could send the Sergeant at Arms to arrest Pam Bondi, and this could all be resolved in the House of Representatives. The Senate wouldn't have to vote on this if you find her in inherent contempt. You could also fine her an amount every day, her personally, for not releasing these files. And then finally, if the judge finds that we don't have standing, or that our amici isn't, I would say, helpful to the victims who do have immediate standing right now in that criminal case, we could bring a civil case in a court and with one of the victims alongside of us as a plaintiff, and establish standing that way, and then get the judge to rule for Pam Bondi to release the files. And then if she doesn't, then that judge could find her in contempt. There are lots of ways to skin this cat. I think you're right to be a wet blanket. I mean, I've got 13 years of being a wet blanket. Like, my expectations are so low, they can't get any lower. But I do have to admit, once we got this bill passed, my expectations went like an inch above the ground.
So obviously this is, I don't know how they didn't plan for this politically, but they didn't. And it's fracturing the MAGA base. In fact, Candace Owens said this about this Epstein release.
You're going to infiltrate and convince us that this is the same party while we get gaslit about everything that's happening. Like I said, you lost the party. MAGA got fractured, not when Tucker Carlson interviewed Nick Fuentes, but when Donald Trump looked at us in our faces and said, Epstein who? That's when it was game over.
So I mean, there's been a lot of what I could have termed here at the show betrayals of MAGA. The bombing of Iran was a betrayal. The bombing of Yemen was a betrayal. The kidnapping of Maduro, the bombing of the fishing boats, those are all betrayals. The implementation of DEI on college campuses for Jewish students, the restrictions on speech over Zionist language. These are all betrayals. And of course, this Epstein file is one of the biggest betrayals, and it's fractured the MAGA base. Would you consider that the breaking point? It was over the Epstein files, like Candace Owens says?
Well, I don't think that MAGA was gaslit. I think they were torched with a blowtorch on the Epstein thing. Yeah, they've been gaslit on the other stuff. But the president, Candace was too charitable there. The president said, and I won't get the quote exactly right, but he said, "You're no longer my supporter. I don't consider you a supporter if you're still asking for these files." And that's when he told the half of the MAGA base, basically, take a long walk on a short pier, get lost. I don't need you anymore. And I think that's a problem, because even though people care about the economy more than they do, for instance, the Epstein files or foreign policy or whatever, but this was endemic of the promise that Trump made. Here was a guy who looked like he could go toe-to-toe with these billionaires. He had gone to their parties, and he was going to come in the government, and he was going to bring them to account. And now it seems like he's on their side of the billionaires, of the elite Epstein class, as Ro Khanna calls them. And that's not class warfare. I'm not saying that because you're rich, I don't like you. I'm saying because you're rich and you think you don't have to go in front of a judge and stand for trial for the things you did, that's the reason I don't like you. And so that's the Epstein class that the Trump said, you know, even though those were among his social circles in West Palm Beach and in New York, we thought he was going to be with us and not them, and now he's with them. That's a problem. And by the way, on all those betrayals you listed, I think that's a pretty good list. There may be a few others in there. I would include on spending, although he wasn't particularly, that wasn't a big MAGA thing, but some of these deep state programs are going to be funded, and also the spying and stuff like that. But on all of those betrayals, I've stuck with the promise. And that's what's getting me in trouble. And that's what members of Congress, Republican members of Congress, each day, their political situation is getting more perilous because each day they are choosing to side against the MAGA promise and with Donald Trump. And ultimately, I think that's a big reason Marjorie Taylor Greene left.
So there's definitely a split. So there's people like you, there's people like Marjorie Taylor Greene, and what I've been telling Trump, MAGA influencers on social media, I only go on Twitter, is they keep saying, I stand with Trump. These people aren't loyal. Thomas Massie's not loyal to Trump. And I have to remind them that that's not how it's supposed to work. The way it's supposed to work is that the politician is supposed to be loyal to you. And when they're not loyal to you and what they ran on, then you're supposed to hold them accountable. If you're loyal to a person, that's what a cult is. When you're loyal to an ideal or a policy, that's what politics is. And they've gotten it backwards. And so, my thing is that I thought that there was a good chance that Donald Trump was going to be the guy to stand up to these people because of Russiagate. So they did Russiagate because the deep state was against him and they tried to discredit him and get rid of him. That's why they did. Somebody tried to shoot him twice. I'm like, oh my God. So that's why they did those 4 cases of lawfare. The establishment was coming at Donald Trump because he was their enemy. But it's obvious now that he's not their enemy. He's flipped. He's not cutting the deficit. He's exploding it. He's not ending the war in 24 hours. He's bombing at the behest of Israel. He's instituting DEI and speech code laws. He's doing the exact opposite that he ran on. And what do you do? So my question is, what do you think did that? What made him do a 180?
I don't know. Let me characterize the split, though. Among MAGA, it's probably 50-50, you know, or maybe it's 80-20, frankly. Maybe 80% are still with the president. Although I see it in my own polling, Donald Trump's popularity among Republicans. Now, MAGA is a subset of Republicans. It also includes, I think, independents and libertarians and populists. But among Republicans from September to December in Kentucky, I saw his popularity go from 85% to 79%. So I would say some of those are, you know, just Republicans, they're not MAGA. There is a split in MAGA, and it may be 50-50, it may be 70-30, but in Congress, among the Republican conference, it's 221 to 1. Like I'm literally the only one who will say, we said less intervention, we said we're not sending our kids overseas to fight somebody else's wars. We said we're not going to blow up the budget and mortgage our children's futures. We said we were going to release the Epstein files. Like you did, we could go down the list. The promises aren't being kept, but I'm trying to keep them, and that's what gets me in trouble.
Well, and Donald Trump has endorsed your opponent, correct? Coming up in And so, but the good news is that you drew the top spot on the May 19th primary ballot in a race where name ID is high. Research shows that it gives a 1 to 2% advantage, and there it is. And so that's good news. Now you're still. I think I saw one of those Kapali market or somebody said you have an 80% chance of winning now. even though they're throwing all this money, the Zionists, Miriam Adelson, one of them, they're spending a lot of money to try to discredit you and get you to lose. But so how is that going?
Well, I like looking at those betting markets. I don't bet on them because it would be insider trading and I have inside information. I would bet on myself, obviously. But I look at that and I'm surprised I'm at 80% in the betting markets. That means you got to put $4 at risk to win $1 more if you're going to bet on Thomas Massie. Although, I think it's a safe bet. I'm not encouraging people to bet. But what's interesting is the people on the internet who are saying Massie doesn't have a chance, or Donald Trump says he just pulls a single-digit number, out of thin air every time he talks about my polling. He said I'm at 8%, I'm at 9%, I'm at 6%. If you believe that, there's free money on the betting markets, right? Like you can spend $1, my opponent's at 20%, and if you believe he's going to win, you're going to end up with $5, okay? Clearly, people don't believe that, or the market would move in the other direction. Now, I do think it's going to move. I do think they're going to pummel the crap out of me here pretty soon. They've got millions of dollars. We saw it in Jamal Bowman's race. We saw it in Cori Bush's race, where the AIPAC folks said, we can't have any dissension. And I'm even more rare on the Republican side. On the Democrat side, you have a few dissenters from AIPAC. On the Republican side, I'm literally the only one. So the sky's probably the limit on what they could spend against me. Maybe 20 million, maybe more than that. My own polling shows that I'm ahead. My opponent has it's like maybe 15% name ID, maybe 20%. So when we poll, what we do, we don't like to do this, but we want to know the number. After we get them to answer the first question, we say, oh, by the way, did you know that other guy is endorsed by Donald Trump? Does that change your mind? And it does change their mind. He goes up like 20 points and I go down 10, but I'm still winning by a good margin, even with the counter endorsement from Donald Trump. So I do like my odds there on the internet. I would love for some independent group to come in and poll it. I don't go, I could release my 20-page poll and show everybody where we're at with everything, but they would just discount it because there's so many liars on the internet talking about polls that don't exist or weren't done scientifically.
I think people stick with Donald Trump right now, even though he's going against everything that MAGA was supposed to be for. I mean, there is bright spots over at HHS. Don't get me wrong. There are bright spots over there. They did update the vaccine schedule for children. They did get rid of the hepatitis vaccine. First thing to give to a baby makes absolutely no sense. So they got rid of. So there is a bright. So there's that. So tip of the hat. I'll give credit where credit's due. But I think just like the Democrats, the reason why they have such good enemies or horrible enemies like Donald Trump, people want to stay with him because they lived through 4 years of Joe Biden's dementia and all the encroachment on their freedoms and mandating things, and so I think that they just despise his enemies so much that they're willing to stay loyal. Just same way the other way they despise Donald Trump so much, the Democrats, that they'll still vote for a generic Democrat, Kamala Harris, who nobody liked and nobody wanted. Nobody voted for her in the primary ever. So I think that's probably what's happening here, where people want to stay with Donald Trump because they despise his enemies so much. Would you agree with that?
Well, yeah, and while we're listing accomplishments, this may have been at USDA and not HHS, but I know Bobby Kennedy had his hands in it. They redid the food pyramid.
Oh yeah,
and that's I mean, you think of all the lobbyists they pissed off when they did that, all the ag lobbyists. So hats off to them. And so here's what I say, Jimmy. 91% of the time I vote with the party.
Yeah.
I'm still a Republican. I haven't left the party. People say, oh, why don't you go register Democrat, or why don't you try running as a Libertarian? Because I have been registered Republican since I turned 18 and could register to vote. And I'm still with the party. The problem is that when the party leaves its principles, I'm trying to pull them back.
In fact, here's one of the people funding Israeli-American Council to Zionist billionaire Miriam Adelson. They ask her, how do you buy and exercise influence over politicians in the U.S.? Listen to how she doesn't answer this. Watch this.
Miri, you and Sheldon created a lot of relationship over the years with politicians at the state level, especially at the federal level. I want you to share with everyone, why is it so important and how do you do it? Again, writing checks is part of it, but there is more than writing just checks. So how do you do it?
Can you allow me not to answer?
You choose.
I want to be truthful, and there are so many things that I don't want to talk about.
Yeah.
So she won't tell you how she has all this power. I can tell you how she has all this power. It's the check. He mentions the check. Oh, sure, you write the check, but there's more than that. What's more than that is the blackmail. That's the whole point of Epstein files, Jeffrey Epstein, the Mossad, the whole deal. So that's the other part she doesn't want to talk about. That's my guess. What do you think?
By the way, she buys politicians like she buys sports teams, and she's trying to buy a politician in my race. See, the problem is, Jimmy, I'm not for sale. I've been offered donations. They would love to take me to Israel on that vacation, and you can bring your spouse and have a good time, and you can do it every year if you want. You can, come and kiss the wall and see the sights and float in the Dead Sea. Most of my colleagues take them up on that, and they take the money. And by the way, if they would give me the money, I'd probably use it on my campaign. I mean, the thing is, they won't buy my vote. It won't get them anything. That's why they're not going to give me the money. But Miriam Adelson, the woman you just showed there, is one of the 3 billionaires who is financing the attack against me and financing my opponent, not a $5,000 donation. She's from her super PAC to another super PAC. She's given about $1 million so far, and I expect she'll give a lot more. Ironically, most of her money comes from gambling in Asia now. Yep. They went global, the Adelsons did, and went to Asia, and it's just interesting. They are buying politicians in America with money that's being gambled in Asia, and blackmail that is being set up by, Mossad or other probably independent people working on this. And they're pretty darn good at it. I mean, I'm the only one in Congress who will say this on the Republican side.
So here is the kind of billionaires at the Israeli-American Council talk about politicians. Here's what Miriam Adelson has done. She's $5 million to AIPAC in 2024, $100 million to Trump in 2024, almost $5 million to Friends of the IDF in 2021. And then Haim Saban has given $1 million to AIPAC, $10 million to the Friends of IDF, $30 million raised for Friends of the IDF. So, as Aaron Mate says, the first Trump presidency was consumed by liberal fan fiction that he was controlled by, funded by, and even passing secret polling data to Russian oligarchs. Meanwhile, on planet Earth, Israel-American oligarchs flaunt how they buy off both Trump and his opposition. So it's considered to say that the Zionists control the government. That's you're supposed to not say that. That's supposed to be some kind of racist thing, or only white supremacists say that or something. I've heard on CNN. I've heard that on CNN. But
no, that's anti-Semitic if you comment on that. But that would make a lot of Israelis anti-Semitic who are critical of Benjamin Netanyahu. You can't even be critical of Israel in the United States, and certainly not on a campus now. When you showed me the Friends of IDF and that both of them give to them, that reminds me of here in the Midwest. I don't know if they have it where you are, but you can donate to causes for police. And then you get a sticker that says Friends of, the state troopers or whatever. You can put that on your car and hope it keeps you from getting a speeding ticket. I wonder what kind of sticker you get to put on your private jet when you're friends of the IDF? Do you get a big bumper sticker that lets you fly into Israel without a call signal? And
you get a license. You get a license plate frame, so they know. I see you're wearing your national debt on your, and so that was another promise. I thought was part of MAGA that they were going to cut the deficit, and that's why they were doing Doge, because this is unsustainable, and that it's at some point our economy will crash. And you have tweeted out recently, because Peter Schiff said that Trump has it backwards. The U.S. doesn't subsidize the world subsidizes the U.S. The dollar's reserve currency status allows us to live beyond our means. Soaring debt, tariffs, and military threats jeopardize that status. When it's lost, economic collapse will follow. And you said, as the dollar's reserve currency status diminishes, so does our ability to tax the world by creating more money. When the reserve status is lost, maintaining current spending levels and servicing the debt will be even more painful for Americans who will bear the full inflation tax. So what people don't realize, that it's a unipart. So Trump is still sanctioning Russia, just like Joe Biden was. So when you do that, when you sanction other countries, you're actually taking money out of our treasury, because they have to, that's like a surcharge that they pay to use our currency. And now Russia went from like doing all their trading in 80% US dollars. Now it's down to like 10%. So we lose all that money. And so we're shooting ourselves in the foot. And so that's why there's things like BRICS happening, where these other countries are like, hey, we can't do this anymore. We don't want to use the US reserve currency. And as soon as that's over, so is our economy over. And it seems like it's coming close. People don't realize that this is the most, which is why gold has gone from, $1,800, and now it's like up to $5,000 in just a couple of years. And it's because people like China, Japan, they're pulling their money out of the United States Treasury bonds and putting it in gold, because they see the writing on the wall. And the whole thing about Doge was that I thought they were going to do that, and then they didn't. He does the big, beautiful bill, which explodes the deficit, but you also voted for that bill, did you not?
I didn't vote for the big, beautiful bill.
Oh, you did not? Oh, that's...
No, I'm one of one, maybe one of two Republicans who didn't vote for it, because I said this increases spending by hundreds of billions of dollars per year. Like, there's no two ways around it. And then they do the same trick. I don't care whether it's Republican speaker or Democrat speaker. They use a 10-year budget, and they say, oh, this baby balances in 10 years. Well, what they do is they front load all of the tax cuts and the spending increases. And they say in year 5 we'll sober up and these tax cuts will expire. Like it does, the no tax on tips expires after 3 years. The tax break for seniors expires after 3 years. They've got $400 billion in the first 3 years for DHS and DOJ and DOD. And they're saying, oh, but in years 4 and 5, we cut all that out. The taxes go back up. The spending goes down. But see, here's the problem, Jimmy. When I came into Congress, I came into somebody else's year 4 or 5, right? They said there was a fiscal cliff. Like literally the first month I'm in Congress. They're like, oh my gosh, it's a fiscal cliff. I'm like, what's a fiscal cliff? Oh, it's where you do what you promised you were going to do like 3 or 4 years ago. Now the day has come and it's going to screw everybody up if the taxes go back up and the spending goes down. So we're going to call it a fiscal cliff. So what they did in that big, beautiful bill, they created somebody else's fiscal cliff 5 years from now. And they're going to run around like chickens with their heads cut off in Washington, D.C. and say this will tank the economy if we don't extend these tax cuts. And our military will be, just hollowed out. It'll be a hollow shell of what it once was if we don't keep spending the levels we spent in the first 3 or 4 years. Now, back to your Doge thing. I had a surreal moment. I don't remember if it was, I think it was March was when they don't call it the State of the Union. The first one, is not really the State of the Union because the president just got into office. I forget what they call it, but I was there And Doge was well underway. They had spent several months. They had some of the sharpest minds in the country looking at computers that are 50 years old and finding all this crap, fraud, waste, and abuse. And I saw the president, right there in front of me, listing some of the ridiculous things the money had been spent on. And my colleagues stood up like straight as an arrow and clapped like seals when they pointed to Elon Musk and thanked him for finding all of this. And I thought, guys, you've been writing these checks. You're the one. You should be like shameful. You should hang your head and walk out of this room. If you acknowledged who made all that spending, you wouldn't even be able to stay in this room, much less clap that it had been found. And I thought, there is no way they're actually going to take this out of the budget. And they didn't. They did a CR. They did a continuing resolution. And we're still mostly on a CR, ironically, from Biden's last budget. We're still spending the same levels. We did rescind like $8 billion, and then another 10 billion or something. Not a whole lot of money. I mean, these are billion-dollar solutions to trillion-dollar problems. But we put it all back in. It's all getting stuffed right back in, Jimmy, this month.
Yeah, it was a real disappointment. I can't tell you how much of a disappointment. And people don't realize that this. So, I mean, you realize this is unsustainable. People like Peter Schiff realize it. I realize it. The gold market realizes it. What do you think is, again, I'd hate to be a wet blanket, but I think it is going to happen. We're going to lose our reserve currency and we're going to become Brazil.
Let me explain what Peter Schiff's talking about, and then I tried to restate, and you understand it very well. But other currencies in the world, they fluctuate with respect to the dollar. So let's say you're in a country and you want a budget to buy a bridge, a really important bridge in your country, and you're going to have to buy the steel for it 6 months from now. Well, you like to hold U.S. dollars because you know what the price of steel is going to be in U.S. dollars 6 months from now because the dollar doesn't fluctuate much. So you have to hold U.S. dollars, and they hold it oftentimes in the form of our debt. Because if you want to buy something with dollars, you got to have those dollars in your wallet. You can't say, oh, I want to buy it with French francs, but I don't have any dollars right now. So you have to hold those dollars. Well, what happens is when we monetize our own debt, let's say we increase the money supply by 3% every year or 5% every year. Those guys, we're taking it from every country. We're taking money through inflation from every country that's holding dollars because they want to buy stuff with dollars because everybody accepts dollars. It's like American Express or a MasterCard, right? They take 3%. We're taking 3% from the entire world. But I watched Putin's interview with Tucker. The first hour was like puts you to sleep. It was like a history of Russia, which may or may not be true. But if you could wake up the next day and watch the second half, Putin, obviously there's tons of propaganda in that. But one thing that he said was true. He said, look, you guys got the best deal going. Before you sanctioned Russia, 75% of our transactions were in US dollars, and now it's like 17%. Well, that was a couple years ago. You're probably right. It's probably closer to 10% now. And we don't get to charge 3% to Russia anymore, on all those transactions. And there are other countries, when we sanction them, this is one of the reasons I'm not for sanctions. If you go back and look, I mean, I've never voted to sanction a sovereign country. A terrorist group, yeah, we can sanction them. But when you sanction sovereign countries that hold US dollars, boom, you're getting rid of the deal. So, and you're right, when people say, oh, the price of gold is going up. No, the value of the dollar is going down with respect to gold. And even sometimes when you see the stock market go up, I say, oh, they're just repricing Ford for the new dollar, which is worth, 90% of what it used to be. So of course Ford's going to be 110% of what it was in US dollars. And that's happening right now. When it does happen, I pulled my microphone off. Can you still hear me?
Yeah, I got you.
Okay. I got excited and I kicked my boot. What happens when we're the only one using dollars is when we print more dollars and we try to print another $1 trillion or even $100 billion more dollars, we're going to feel it immediately in our own pocketbooks. U.S. citizens who are trying to buy cars and clothes and housing and electricity, that inflation is going to kick in like almost immediately. And then the government's going to have a problem because they got to buy stuff that's inflated very quickly. So the whole inflation cycle speeds up when we're the only one using dollars. It's like it really is a fiat currency, like company script at that point. And that's when you look like one of these other countries who tinker with their own currency to try to fix their economic woes. And that's what I'm talking about in that tweet. When that happens, it's going to be extremely painful. Right now, we're getting a free ride. When I first came to Congress, I was worried it would collapse immediately. And then I realized this whole reserve currency thing is what keeps it going. We get to tax the world for our own overspending. And that's going to end. And I mean, looking at what's happening with the gold and silver right now, we may be at the beginning of that right now. And the other thing is, the president wants the Fed to lower the interest rates. We're not really in control of interest rates like we used to be. Because if you cut interest rates, okay, that's great. But the people who buy our debt are going to say, you know what, we don't think you're a good deal because we know you tend to inflate your dollars and you're promising to pay us back in dollars. So if you want me to borrow money and you're only going to give me 3%, I don't think that's a good deal. I think I'll buy gold or silver instead. And so we're starting to see that, and that's why interest rates, even if they cut them, even if the Fed cuts interest rates, you can't take water out of the shallow end of the pool and put it in the deep end, or vice versa, take it out of the deep end and put it in the shallow end. It's all going to equilibrate somewhere, and you're chasing your tail, and we're getting there quickly.
So there was a 51-50 Senate vote blocked the Venezuelan War Powers Resolution after two Republicans succumbed to Trump's pressure tactics. Josh Hawley and Todd Young flipped to sink it. All the Dems voted for it. Vance was the tiebreaker to block it. So what this was, well, here's what you say. You say, it is shameful that senators in safe seats can't stand up to the political pressure of this president and his henchmen, even when they know what's in the best interest of the United States and what their oath to the Constitution requires of them. Ambition is their downfall. So you were trying to get the control back to Congress to declare war with Venezuela, and you almost did it. And it didn't work. And so does voting even matter? I mean, it makes me feel like voting doesn't even matter.
Man, I have three answers to every one of your questions.
Okay.
Pull me back to the original question after I answer whether voting matters or not.
Okay.
You want to know where the election gets stolen?
Yeah.
After you elect your congressmen and your senators, and they go to Washington, D.C., now the election is probably fine and dandy about, who is the rightful senator or who's the rightful representative. But once they get to Washington, D.C., their voting card gets stolen by the lobbyists and by the leadership, and in this case now, by the powerful lobbyists who are supporting the president. They demand 100% compliance. So the one vote that I observed this after being in Congress for a couple years, the most important vote at the beginning of the year for most of my colleagues is who the speaker is going to be, because that's the guy who's going to hold their voting card for the next 2 years. That's where your election gets stolen. Your congressman gets stolen. You could have the safest election in the world, and your vote's still going to get stolen because you trusted your congressman with the cow, and he went up there and traded it for magic beans. And unlike Jack and the Beanstalk, they never do sprout. He makes terrible deals, and he's using the equity of the vote that you gave him. Okay, when you said, does voting matter, I had to go on that little rant. Now there was a question before that. About War Powers Resolution. We had I worked with the Democrats, and we forced the war powers vote in December. So we actually beat the Senate to the punch. We had a vote in December in the House of Representatives on whether the president could go to war in Venezuela without an act of Congress. And one of the things I heard from my colleagues who wanted to do the right thing but couldn't bring themselves to do it, frankly, I think they were scared. They said, well, you're premature here, Massie. All we've done is blown up some boats, and those boats aren't in Venezuela. And your war powers resolution says retreat from hostilities until you get an authorization of Congress. Well, we're not really, the president's not engaged in hostilities in Venezuela, so we're not going to vote for your war powers resolution. Well, we are scheduling another war powers resolution shortly after I get back. It takes about 15 days to get one of these rolling. And so Jim McGovern and I have teamed up. He's the ranking member on the Rules Committee. He's a Democrat from Massachusetts. We've teamed up to put another war powers resolution on the floor. By the way, we've got one for Iran coming up as well that Rokan and I are co-sponsoring. So we're going to force this vote. And the problem is, Marjorie Taylor Greene's gone. We got her in December to vote that you had to have the authority of Congress. And if I may say one more thing on this topic, here's the shameful thing. The president could probably get a majority of the House and the Senate. Anyway. So why are my colleagues running from this vote? If they're running from it in case the thing doesn't turn out very well, they won't be blamed. Let's say that, you break it, you bought it. Let's say things go bad in Venezuela and we got to start sending money down there, or people start getting murdered, or we have to send our troops back and we lose some troops, or the same thing could happen with Iran. Let's say this time they overwhelm missile defense in Israel and other ones of our allies. They can't reach us right now, but things go bad. My colleagues don't want to have their fingerprints on it. So they won't even vote to vote.
That's right. They won't even vote to vote. They're like, nope, let's not. I'm going to vote to not have a vote.
Yeah, that's right.
But that's been going on since 9/11 pretty much, although Iraq actually did get a vote. I think Afghanistan did get a vote. But Libya didn't, Syria didn't. But they voted to send money to Ukraine.
Both Iraq votes, both of those got a vote. Yeah. And those were AUMFs. And the Iraq one is still in place, and so is the one in Afghanistan. The one in Afghanistan is troubling because it's a war on terror that has no boundaries or time or space.
So Donald Trump, when I see this, it really turns my stomach. But he was asked if Iran keeps trying to develop their interballistic missiles. Well, here's what he says. Will
you support an attack, Israeli attack on Iran, if Iran will not have a deal? If Iran will continue with their ballistic missiles and also nuclear weapons?
So he's asked, will you support an Israeli attack on Iran if Iran keeps trying to develop their ballistic missiles and their nuclear missiles? And here's his response.
If they will continue with the missiles, yes. The nuclear, fast.
So yes, he will support an attack by Israel on Iran if they continue to develop their ballistic missiles. And here it is. So this is breaking. Iran successfully tests its first intercontinental ballistic missile. Reports say the missile reached Siberia with Russia's approval. It's considered a major step forward in missile development. The world watches, and Trump's decision now hangs at the tip of this missile. And so there it is. It's a really pretty missile. It's really nice. But anyway, and here I'll give you one more from Monitor. During the last 56 hours, 16 military cargo planes from China have landed in Iran. This is the largest amount of military aid China has ever transferred to Iran in such a short period of time. So, what do you think, Donald? So this is obviously just a game for the Zionists, for Israel. Every country they've wanted us to attack, we've attacked for them, right? Whether it's Iraq, whether it's Libya, whether it's Syria, whether it's Yemen, Somalia, it's nonstop. And now Lebanon, and now Iran. He's already attacked Iran. and getting ready to do it again if he keeps his word. And now China's getting involved with ramping up military aid to Iran. And remember this guy? Do you remember this guy? Does the U.S. want to be the policeman of the Middle East, getting nothing but spending precious lives and trillions of dollars protecting others who, in almost all cases, do not appreciate what we are doing? Do we want to be there forever? Time for others to find. What happened to that guy, and what do you think is going to happen in Iran? Go ahead, take it wherever you want.
Well, it's almost never what they say it's about. And so the first attack on Iran, sure, it was motivated in the United States by their nuclear program. But the reality is, I believe, that Israel had calculated that Iran was collecting enough conventional missiles that they could eventually overwhelm the defense of Israel. Their Golden Dome, or Iron Dome, they've only got so many missiles. And so I think that first attack was just about pummeling their conventional missiles so that Israel wouldn't, could act with impunity, could keep acting with impunity and not worry about an attack from Iran. Iran has never had the capability of hitting us with a nuclear weapon. That's not to say they couldn't develop it, or any country that's a first world country, not a third world country, couldn't. With AI, I'm sorry, but any of the missing steps, an AI is going to be able to figure out for you. Like we're going to have super intelligence. It's better than our best scientists, and so will any country that's got computers and the power to run them. And so I'm actually a proponent of making sure we have a good missile defense system. I think it'd be a whole hell of a lot cheaper than going around and trying to extinguish the military capability of every country that, gets out of the primordial ooze with their technology. Eventually that's not sustainable. And why can Israel have an Iron Dome and we don't have a dome? I think, and it's, it should be something, it's an achievable technical project, given that we've got two oceans between us and most of our adversaries.
So, what is your prediction for what Donald Trump's going to do in Iran, and are we ever going to break this stranglehold that Israel has over our foreign policy?
I don't know if we'll break the stranglehold. My election will be sort of a referendum on that. Can there be one Republican congressman who doesn't toe the line, who doesn't vote for infringements on the First Amendment on campus, just for a foreign country that has, I don't know, what, about 10 million people or something? It's a referendum on that. So if I lose, I think you should make your blanket even wetter, Jimmy. If I lose, because there is no hope. That's what the three billionaires want to make it a referendum on, is whether there can be any dissension. And that's what they did. I was no big fan of Jamal Bowman or Cori Bush. If you looked at our voting records, I'm not sure we ever voted the same ever on anything. But he lost his race, and she did as well, their primaries, for the wrong reason. And it was to demonstrate, at least to Democrats, that there's a price to pay if you deviate from the foreign policy that Israel wants America to have.
So what can we do? Like, well, here, let me just, there's one more. So I want to, this, I can't get over what's going. Honestly, I'm depressed. Honestly, since Trump became president, I didn't have faith that he would be do what he said, but I had hope that he would. And now it's all been down, except for the border. Like, so it turns out you could close the border. By the way, you don't need a wall. You could just kind of almost flip a switch, and he closed the border down. So that was fantastic. But here,
isn't that interesting? Isn't that interesting? I haven't heard anybody talk about a wall in 9 months. And they claim, and I believe them, I got no reason to disbelieve, that illegal entries have almost completely stopped. Yeah. So why? Clearly, all what was needed was a change of policy, not some piece of infrastructure. And the thing with a wall is, when the policy changes, a wall is always going to have a door in it. They could open the doors. And by the way, I voted for the wall. I mean, okay, let's have a wall. But what's interesting is I haven't heard anybody talk about it for a while. And you asked me to make a prediction. If ever I don't answer one of your questions, it's not because I was avoiding the question. It's because I thought there was 3 questions in one.
Okay.
And so I answered 2 of them and forgot to answer your main question. You asked me to make a prediction on Iran. I've got a 30,000-foot crystal ball I want to use. I don't know what's going to happen in Iran, but the fact that we just kidnapped the leader of Venezuela and everybody just kind of looked the other way, and including our European allies, like, you know, I think as soon as we did that in Venezuela and you barely heard a whimper over there, Trump's like, well, hell, Greenland's on the menu now. Like, they're not going to stop me in Venezuela. Let's try Greenland. What's interesting is Putin had more claim to Crimea than Trump has to Greenland, right? I mean, at least there was some historical basis, and most of the people there in Crimea spoke Russian, and they had a big military installation and whatnot. Here's my prediction. My prediction is I don't know where we're going to do regime change, but there's 3 years left, and every time the president does something without Congress acting, Congress's power to intervene atrophies, and the power of our European allies, whenever they don't say anything, their power atrophies. And so I see no limiting principle. There's in the rationalization for why we did what we did in Venezuela or why we can bomb Iran, there's no limiting principle. So my prediction is this: in the next 3 years, you're going to have at least 2 more regime changes. And I don't know if it's going to be Iran or where it's going to be, but there will be regime change. It's on the menu, and there's no limiting principle right now.
And so you would think that would destroy J.D. Vance's chance of becoming president, or, you know, this coalition of MAGA that Trump created. A lot of it was the libertarian non-interventionists, right? A lot of them wanted to ratchet down the deficit and the debt, and he's just doing the exact opposite. A lot of them wanted to expand free speech. He's again limiting it. It's just nuts. What was my question? And now I can't even remember it. But
well, by the way, to your point about the coalition with the libertarians, that is true. I called up Donald Trump. I didn't expect him to take my call. This was before the November election. And on the second ring, I hear, "Hello, this is Donald." And he was on his plane to go tape Joe Rogan, and he has me in his phone. And we chatted for a while, and I said, look, there's, I think there are a lot of libertarians and independents who follow me who are not on board yet. And it's not a whole lot. It's not like a giant number, but it could make the difference in Pennsylvania or Wisconsin. And I would like to endorse you. And he and I talked about his coalition with libertarians. He had gone to the national convention. He said, they love me at the convention. And, I was there. He got roundly booed a few times, but he was right about one thing. He said, that kid they locked up for like 100 years. I said, Ross Ulbricht. He's like, yeah, put that in your endorsement. The libertarians will love it. They all applauded when I said I was going to free that kid. And so I did. You go back and look at my endorsement. I put Ross Ulbricht in my endorsement in the middle of these grand things about saving the world and the country and, sanity. I put, and he'll free Ross Ulbricht. It's because Trump told me to. He reached out to the libertarians. By the way, he did free Ross Ulbricht like on his second day in office, and I took Ross to the State of the Union. So that is, the coalition with libertarians was there. I think it's gone. I think he's lost all the libertarians at this point. He's lost a lot of independents. You can see that in the polls, and he's losing some of the Republicans. by not staying with the things that he promised, by letting Lindsey Graham and Marco Rubio lead him, and Miriam Adelson lead him into foreign intervention.
So what is the real purpose of Venezuela and Greenland? We all know the real purpose of Iran. What? And by the way, he's not getting us out of Ukraine, which that's a whole nother story. But what is the real purpose of Venezuela and Greenland? Right? We all know war's a racket. It's never what it appears. So what is it really?
Jimmy, didn't you know it was fentanyl until they found out? Until they found out that Venezuela doesn't make fentanyl. And so then it was cocaine. But no, it's not just cocaine, it's narco-terrorism. And it's funded by the oil. Now, this is where they lost me completely. If there's one industry that doesn't need subsidized by the oil industry, it's the cocaine industry, right? Like, I'm pretty sure in the profit and loss balance sheet of Venezuela and the CIA, that cocaine is a profit center. So don't tell me we needed to take their oil to keep them from selling cocaine. But that's what we did. And then they said, actually, it's about a quarter of a century old contract that some of these oil companies had with the country of Venezuela. And we're just coming in to enforce the contract and take their oil. But when did our soldiers become the policemen to enforce these civil contracts with foreign countries about who's going to drill and refine their oil? Anyway, so it became about the oil. But we've got enough oil. We got enough. If we want, we could be energy independent in this country. I think it's about them going away from the dollar, from engaging in trade with countries that were sanctioned. It was not what they said it was about in the beginning. They called fentanyl a weapon of mass destruction, and they said that's why we got to bomb the boats, and eventually why we got to go into Venezuela. What is Greenland about? Oh, by the way, while we're still on Venezuela, the Constitution says that Congress appropriates the money. That couldn't be more clear. Okay. It's our job to write the checks. The founders made that the case. But the president and his geniuses at the White House have created a second treasury that's in Qatar. They're saying we're going to take all the oil money and we're going to put it in a bank overseas.
Yes.
No. So one of my questions is, why does the bank need to be overseas when you create your second treasury? I think it's to hide it from the long arm of the law, from the judges who would say, that is Congress's money. We're going to take that and put it in the treasury. You can't have money that you spend. Like, it's one thing to confiscate money from another country, but it's another thing to spend it. And I was talking to a lawyer about this who was troubled as I was, about the president, the executive branch, taking the role of Congress to appropriate money. And I said, but doesn't the CIA do this every day? And he said, yes, but you, Congress, wrote a law that lets the CIA do this. You've created no law to let the president have this alternate treasury that he can spend money out of on whatever he wants.
And so what is Greenland really about?
So this, like what Venezuela was about, how that morphed, Greenland is morphing as well. Sometimes it's about the president didn't get the Nobel Peace Prize. Like, he literally said that in his letter, and that was part of the reason. I hear people say, oh, there's resources there that can be mined. The most recent thing I hear is that it's necessary for the defense of our country, that if we're going to have our own Golden Dome, we need to have this piece of land to set things up on. My issue with that is, whatever it costs to acquire Greenland, you can create an oil rig or a floating platform anywhere, offshore, somewhere in the ocean. I mean, Elon Musk is landing rockets backwards on floating platforms. We can have a missile defense that's mobile, and it's probably much more defensible that way. Like, can you imagine if the United States missile defense was like in one hole that we drilled in Greenland, and everybody was watching because they knew that's why we were doing it. All you got to do is take that place out, and then you could take out our missile defense. You'd be much better to have platforms that move around. So I don't think it's, and by the way, we do have some of that equipment. I'm not sharing secrets to tell you that we have floating platforms in the Pacific. You can see them with the big white dome. I've visited on congressional trips, but you can see these from satellites, and people know what they are. I'm not giving anything away. So I don't think it's about the missile defense. I think it's about might makes right. I think it's about the president wants to have something to his name where he expanded, the United States while he was in office.
Okay, so that makes as much sense as anything, because we already have a agreement with Greenland. We can do military exercises there. We can have our military bases. We can have things there. So we already have it. So you're right. Well, listen, I know we said we're going to have you on for an hour. We've gone over, and I just want to say I really appreciate you making time for us. What's it? Oh, I have 90 minutes. Oh, I got 20 more minutes. Oh, that's very exciting. Okay.
Daggone it. I was getting excited to go home and have my margarita.
20 more minutes.
I envy you being able to drink at this age. I can't. Anyway, so they had a vote, and they voted to fund NED, which is the National Endowment for Democracy, which is a CIA cutout, right? So they invented the NED so that the rest of the world wouldn't know what the CIA was actually doing, but they're doing it through the NED, and it sounds really democracy-like because it's right in the name, National Endowment for Democracy. What it's really is National Endowment for Regime Change Wars, and this is the kind of stuff that Trump was supposed to be against, MAGA was against, and they just voted. So 81 Republicans just voted to fund NED. So did every single Democrat. If Republicans voted in a block like Democrats, NED would be defunded now. And so the Heritage Foundation even screamed about this. They said it's a complete betrayal of the Americans who sent them there. NED is a radical left-wing enterprise and the global tip of the spear of disinformation and censorship campaigns against conservatives. The objective of some so-called conservatives appear to be preserve the deep state and destroy the historic opportunity Americans gave them to make lasting improvements in federal government. And here's what you said. The president and his cabinet let this happen. All we needed to get unanimous disapproval of NED funding by House Republicans was a statement from the president. This isn't 4D chess. We're losing a game of checkers. That's so sad. Again, explain this to me, how this happens, and explain to me, I mean, this is just Trump just giving the middle finger and the Republican Party to the MAGA base.
I told you my expectations are so low.
Yeah.
I am just excited we got a vote on whether NED was going to be in that bill or not. We almost never get separate votes. So I'm outraged like you are, but I offered an amendment to defund NED, and Eli Crane offered an amendment to defund NED. And so they allowed his amendment. I don't mind that his name was on it on that previous screen because he had a good amendment, same as mine. And I thought, I knew they were going to fund NED. I didn't know they'd get 81 Republicans to fund it. Like, I thought they might get like 12 or 20 Republicans. And really all you needed, because when the president says jump, every Republican but me now, and maybe 2 or 3 others, says how high. He could have said, we're going to defund this. He could still say, I'll veto any bill that has NED in it. He could say that. And if he says that, they're not going to put NED in it. But even a lighter statement, like, we need to defund this. This is, what funded the disinformation campaign against me and censored conservatives. And this is how we lost my last election and blah, blah, blah. He could have said anything. And he could have brought the Republicans to heel in the House and defunded this, but he didn't. The White House was completely silent on this, and they'll be silent when he signs the bill that has this in it ultimately.
Again, it's just an unbelievable heartbreaker. What's happening? why should I even bother voting again or giving a remote crap about this banana republic? I mean, I know it sounds bitter, but it's a genuine question. I mean, why are you the only one who consistently has, consistency and moral principle of any kind? Doesn't it, the whole thing is garbage. I mean, even 81 Republican. I mean, the whole they're all controlled. Donald Trump is controlled by the same WEF globalist billionaires that Joe Biden was controlled by. They don't hate each other. The billionaire class, they all work together. They just pick which side they're going to fund, right? So how do we really get our way out of this, Thomas? What do we? We don't live in a democracy. We actually do live in an oligarchy, and our foreign policy is run by Israel. And so what do we do?
I would suggest it's 10 times more important to vote in a primary than it is a general election. By the time you get to the general election, the uniparty has typically chosen whoever's going to be on the Republican side and whoever's going to be on the Democrat side. There are occasionally miracles that happen in primaries where somebody catches fire, they take off, and they've got the grassroots behind them and they can win. But about in my first race for Congress, mind you, I represent about 750,000 people, and so does every other congressman. That's why they do the census, so they can divide it up equally. In my first race to become a congressman, I got 19,000 votes out of 750,000 people. That was enough to win. Why did that win the race for me? Because this is a red district, and people are just going to reflexively show up and vote Republican or Democrat in the red districts and the blue districts, which are most of the districts. And especially after this next cycle, things are getting more and more gerrymandered so that you have either safe Republican seats or safe Democrat seats. In the states where they're able to gerrymander the representative seats, they're trying to make them more bifurcated. What that means is the primaries are going to matter more and more. The reason I only needed 19,000 votes is a lot of people don't vote in primaries. And AOC, for instance, in her first race, I went and looked this up. She took out like a guy who had been in Congress for 2 decades or something, a popular Democrat. She got 14,000 votes. 14,000 votes. She represents 750,000 people because 14,000 people showed up. Like, was a Republican going to win AOC's district? Hell no. The whole shooting match was the primary. So if you say, I'm only going to vote once every 2 years, then I would encourage you to vote in the primary and not vote in the general. And the other thing you should do, if you're, it doesn't matter which party you're in, whichever party is going to win the general in your congressional district, you should probably register to that party and vote in their primary. Now, there's a bunch of Republicans going to try to use this against me on the internet tomorrow, but I would say Rush Limbaugh proposed this with, with the Hillary Clinton thing during her race once. He was encouraging Republicans to get into Democrat primaries and vote. And some people do this, and I'm being a little bit facetious, but the point I am making here is that primaries matter, and it's already decided by the time the primary is over. So if you're watching this, do your research, vote in the primary, donate in the primary, wave signs in the primary, and then by the time, if you lost in the general, in the primary, it may not even be worth supporting the person in your party who won, because you're going to get the same uniparty slop when they get to Washington, D.C. So and vote for your principles. Vote for somebody that represents principles. That's the other thing. You don't have to agree with the person all the time. You can imagine there are a lot of my constituents who don't agree with me all the time. People come up and say, you know what, Massie? I only agree with you 80% of the time. But I am so glad you're fighting and you're not sold out and you're voting for what you believe is right.
I hate to wet blanket you, but I don't think we're going to be able to vote our way out of this. It seems
Maybe not.
There's that saying: no matter who you vote for, you get John McCain, and that's exactly happened with Donald Trump. You know, Donald Trump was this anti-establishment guy going to stand up to the billionaires, and it makes me, and you know, now it makes me rethink what happened in Butler, Pennsylvania. Like, oh my God, was he in on it? Like, it doesn't make sense that he would shut down that investigation. It doesn't make sense that there was nobody looking at the roofs. It doesn't make sense that it's a lone nut all the time. Lone nut. The guy was seen. So anyway, I'm going off on a tangent here, but it just seems like there's no fighting the deep state, that they're going to win, that they do. And we're just stuck. And here, let me just, before we say goodbye, I like how you said this. You said, hey, Denmark, tell the administration the Epstein files are in Greenland. They'll lose all interest and we'll never be able to find it. So I was watching this. That's very funny, by the way. So again, I hate to, it's just such a depressing time. My Chicago Bears lost. It's just so hard. It's so hard. But anyway, I wanted to show you this. I guess there's a million things I still want to talk to you about. Like they're in Florida, they're sending cops to people's houses over social media posts now. I don't know if you saw that.
Crazy.
But Tucker Carlson in an interview with this advisor to Putin, and he told him that they're willing to do nuclear war. Let's listen to a little bit of this.
But none of those concerns.
So all the concerns that we've been talking about, none of them, according to Tucker,
even close to what's happening in Eastern Europe, what's happening between Russia and Ukraine. Russia, and prepare yourselves because this is the global headline, Russia is actively considering the use of nuclear weapons against Europe. Not against Kiev, against Europe, specifically the UK and Germany. Just taking out the UK and Germany with nuclear weapons. That's a fact. Now, we're going to explain why we know that that's true in a moment. And at the end of this open, we're going to play an interview we did a few hours ago with a man called Sergei Karnagov, who is a longtime political advisor to Vladimir Putin and one of the most famous public intellectuals in Russia, been around for about 35 years.
So here's what he actually said. So Tucker asks him,
they're talking about that. What is defeat of Russia?
What is the defeat of Russia? So they're talking about this. So Europe wants to defeat Russia. So does NATO. So what is the defeat? What does it look like? And here's what he says.
Just if Russia comes ever close to a defeat, that would mean that Russia now would use nuclear weapons and the Europe will be finished physically. So, I mean, it's simply impossible even to think about it. But they have been talking because they need a war to rationalize their stay in power, to rationalize their existence. It is not about even defeat of Russia now. It is simply keeping on with the failing European Union, with the failing economy, with failing European positions in the world. Everybody in the world now laughs at Europe, which used to be, by the way, one of the core centers of world power. And now it's a joke. Of course, I'm not speaking of all Europe. We know that there are decent Europeans, there are smart Europeans. Though in my political class of European thinkers, and you're on foreign policy and defense, etc., there's only one or two men or persons left. I wouldn't name them because that would jeopardize them in the eyes of the audience. But nobody else. I do not have any interlocutor, almost any interlocutor in Europe anymore.
So he's saying that they'll use nuclear weapons. He asked them point blank, what countries?
If there were nuclear strikes from Russia into Europe in the next year or two, as you said there may be, what countries would that include?
But my choice would be Britain and Germany.
He says it, Britain and Germany. So that's... how come that's not the headline in every newspaper? Because, of course, that's why you have nuclear weapons. If Russia feels like their defeat is imminent, they're going to use them, and that's what he's saying. But it's... so just could you respond to that? Yeah. It seems crazy. And why isn't Trump ending this war?
The question is also how did we get here? It's because our foreign policy has been dictated by people like John McCain and the Bushes. And frankly, people who have no party, who are at the State Department, who have insisted on expanding NATO over and over and over again to basically the humiliation of Russia. So I say Putin is a Cold War relic who was elected due to another Cold War relic, NATO. And, you know, the reason he's still in power is he represents pride. Like people, there's national pride. We're all proud of America, and there are Russians who are proud of Russia. And by continually sticking our finger in their eye, we have they felt, or Putin did, and he's stayed in power. He's not been overthrown like the predictions, in the early stages of Ukraine. Remember, they said, "Oh, his country's going to turn on him. Oh, look, he's dying of cancer or something." There were all these predictions. This will be over quickly, and it's not, because that's what's at stake for them now is their pride, and that's where we are. It's a wounded bear, and they're a nuclear power, and we've always been playing with matches near gasoline to be involved in Ukraine, and it's a place we never should have been, and we never should have. We wouldn't have had to provoke Russia into their action of going into Ukraine. If you looked at Ukraine, it's how in the United States there's the blue counties that I was going to say Biden. I forgot they put Kamala Harris on the ballot instead. But there's the blue counties that Kamala Harris won, and then there's the red counties that Trump won. And you can see where the coasts are, and you can see where Chicago is, and the biggest city in every state. Well, if you did a blue versus red map in Ukraine long ago, it was a continuous, like it went from red to blue, and it was purple in the middle. It's always been that way. And there's just varying degrees of Russian culture on one side, and non-Russian European culture on the other. It never made sense to make it all one or the other, frankly. And when this is over, assuming we don't get into a nuclear war, the end game is going to be largely what it started out with, which is 3 or 4 of those territories that were predominantly dominated by Russia are going to be dominated by Russia. If we can get to an end game that's not nuclear war or something totally crazy.
I mean, I've lived long enough to be through a bunch of wars now, and it's always the same story. And I can't believe that the Americans, after Iraq twice, after Afghanistan for 20 years, after Libya, that they fell for it so easily again in Ukraine. It's just amazing that they fell for this propaganda, and that people, we got to go. But of course, that was the big purpose of Russiagate also, was to prime the pump for this war, because they've been planning this war for 10, 15 years. That's what this was about. And, you can't talk sense to people. Why do you think Donald Trump, he promised to end this war in 24 hours, and here we are a year into his presidency, and he's still funding it, and he's still sanctioning Russia, which is just the most self-destructive thing we could do. Why do you think he's doing that?
He's not completely in control. That's part of it. I don't believe that he was disingenuous when he campaigned and said he was going to end the war and he was going to get us out of Ukraine. I just think you wake up in the morning and you're the president and you got a lot of stuff on your plate. You got to tweet something mad about Thomas Massie, and then you got to tell Canada you're going to invade them, and then you got to go about the other business of the day. And I just think he's left too many things up to other people, but I'm not giving him a pass anymore. Used to, in the first administration, we said, he made some hiring mistakes. He hired John Bolton.
Right.
He hired Bill Barr. Those were mistakes. And he won't, especially like you, when he was shot in the ear, I thought, okay, now here's a man who's been shot. There's no way he's going to get in there and fall for the same slop again and hire bad people who are at odds with the things he campaigned on. But that's where we are. And with the $300 million going to NED, even if you're the president you've only got so many hours in the day, and you just spent $300 million for other people to figure out how to get you to do the things you said you weren't going to do. But here we are, and
so
this is.
So you say he's not in total control. Like what? So who is in control of this Ukraine situation?
It's the people who've always been in control. The people in 2014 who, led the revolution there in Ukraine that instigated that.
The CIA.
The CIA. What's the woman's name? If you said it, I would remember it. She's like a bad penny. She shows up everywhere.
Yes.
Yeah, Victoria Nuland.
That's it.
Yeah, it's those people. It's those people who get into government, and they're there regardless of who the president is, and they're moving around hundreds of millions, if not billions of dollars, regardless of who the president is. They're making phone calls and doing business. And in Congress, the bodies that are supposed to have oversight over this, they, like the Intel Committee, they pick those folks either for not being, I'm going to get in trouble for saying this. I'll just say they're uncurious. The people they put on the Intel Committee are, for the most part, uncurious. They don't ask questions, and whatever you tell them, they're conditioned not to question authority. And then they do have some bright people on there who are basically former deep state, or going to be deep state later in their lives. They're in one door of the revolving door, and they just happen to be on the Intel Committee or the Foreign Affairs Committee in Congress right now, waiting for their job at the CIA, or maybe they were at the CIA and we didn't know it when they got elected to Congress. There are people, who run for Congress and say, hey, I was in the CIA and I protected this country. And then there are people in Congress who are in the CIA and you never know it.
Yeah.
And they go back to the CIA when they're done.
And so why don't you run for president?
I think it would be impossible to win.
Why?
When Rand Paul ran for Senate, it was in Kentucky, and I helped on his campaign. That was in 2010. And I was one of the volunteers, and I did the phones, and I put up signs. And I thought, I kind of understood how you would run for Senate. And 2 years later, I ran for the House and won, using what I learned from that and the people who I made connections with working on Rand's campaign. But then in 2016, I went to Iowa with Rand to, and gave speeches for him or introduced him or went around in the presidential race. Oh man. And we took a pounding. Like we thought that he could do well based on what his father had done. And when I came away from Iowa with this realization, I always thought until I went to Iowa with Rand, I thought that when people voted for Ron Paul, when they voted for Rand Paul, and when they voted for me in Republican primaries, that they were voting for a constitutionalist or libertarian-leaning Republican. But then Donald Trump went to Iowa and got all the people that would have voted for Thomas Massie, Ron Paul, or Rand Paul. And that's when I had to recalibrate my thinking. And I realized when they voted for me and Rand and Ron, they were voting for the craziest son of a bitch in the race. They weren't voting for the libertarian or the constitutionalist, because Trump came in and took all those votes.
Oh, he froze. Out.
I think we timed out. I don't know how we did that. All right.
What do you think happened?
Stand by, ladies and gentlemen. We're going to see if we can get him right back. But it is 5:01. Oh, he has been here for 90 minutes. What a champ. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for tuning in today. We've had Thomas Massie on the show, and what a great conversation we've had so far with Thomas Massie. We're not sure what the technical glitch is right now. I'm just going to go ahead and read a couple of these before they're figuring it out, the tech right now. But thank you for tuning in. Did you hit the like button?
Oh, here we are.
Oh,
We're
think
right
I'm back.
back. Thank you so much.
I don't know what happened. That was the deep state for sure. Okay.
Where did I leave off? Where did I leave off, Jimmy?
But they're voting for the craziest guy in the.
Yeah. All right. Well, good. That's all I needed to say. The craziest son of a bitch in the race, because because Donald Trump got the votes. I just don't see a path to winning.
Okay. Well, if you run out, I'll help you. I'll do whatever I can. How about that? But it's not much, but I'll do whatever I can.
You've got a bigger microphone. Why don't you run and then I'll back you?
Ha! I spoke at the UN Security Council on the anniversary of the Nord Stream pipeline bombing, and on the plane home, I realized that they had hacked into my iCloud account, my computer, and my phone with Pegasus. So listen, in my phone, there's 3 nation states plus our own, is what I said. You want to talk about battery life? I have to carry 3 batteries in my vest, in my pockets all day long, just to keep these nation states, enough electrons to hear and see what I'm doing. So that's why I see what they do to people, and just look what Big Pharma was able to do to RFK Jr. just because he wanted to have safety testing for vaccines, and it's amazing what they can do. I mean, it's with what I say about RFK, he's got lots of flaws, but that's not why the establishment hates him. They hate him for the things that he's right about.
Let me describe some of the other things they do that you don't see. 3 of my consultants have quit, like on my campaign, and all 3 for the same reason. And I don't blame them. I'm not even mad at them. If I were in their shoes, I'd probably quit too. They were told that your other 3 clients will fire you, or sorry, your other 30 clients will fire you if you keep working for Massie. And so they make it hard to basically to hire the people. And for everyone that quit, okay, you go out and you interview 10 people to replace them. And they all tell you the same thing. I can't work for you or I'll lose all my other clients. So it's it's a mafia in the consultant world. By the way, I really love the consultants I got now because they're the ones who said, screw you. I'm going to work for Massie because I believe in what he's doing and I'm good enough at my job. I'll go find some other clients if your clowns fire me. Okay. So good for them. The other thing they do is, I told you I may have told you this, maybe I didn't. I've got 15,000 donors across the United States. My average donation is $80. Is that because I don't want millionaires to give to a super PAC and to help me? No, hell no, I'll take all the help I can get. The problem is if you've reached some degree of success where you have a $1 million disposable income, you probably can't afford to tick off this administration, or they will come at your business. And I'm not talking about IRS audits. Like it's bigger than that. You won't get the permits you need to do the business. You're foreign when you try to do business overseas. That'll get interfered with. So they intimidate. They can't intimidate my $80 donors, right? There's too many of them. But there are. And really over the MAGA split and on foreign policy, there are people of great means, I'm talking about extraordinary means, who could put money in my race and post up against the Israel First billionaires. But they're staying on the sidelines because their business will get ruined. They won't be invited to the parties. The A-list parties and all that goes away. So that's another part of what happens behind the scenes. There are things that you can't see, and I could see that happening in the presidential race as well.
Oh yeah, 100%. Living through the hashtag Me Too era, having a fake one launched at me. I mean, they would just pull people out. I mean, look what they do. I just see what they do, and so I just want someone like you to run, so I don't have to go through that. That's what.
And listen, if there was dirt on me, they would have found it by now. Like they would have. I can guarantee you. You know, I'm a widower, but I spent 35 years with the same woman and married my high school sweetheart. I don't even have any interesting ex-girlfriends from, you know, high school. I married the only one that would go out with me. So, you know, it's a good thing I've got kind of a boring social life and was a nerd because there's not a whole lot that they could ever find on me.
Well, I was, you know, a comedian, so I've spent since 1989, I spent most of the time in nightclubs, and a lot of those nights were drunk and other things, and so I don't even know what I did, and so
you could say it was all in jest.
Yeah. But you know what? I'm sure we disagree on lots of things also, you and I, but I don't ever have to worry about your opinion being bought. And I think we could have a reasonable discussion. And so I realized when Trump got elected in 2016, you know, my mother-in-law voted for Trump because of abortion. And they want me to hate my neighbor because of that. They want, and I realized, well, I love my mother-in-law. She's a wonderful woman. I'm not going to hate people who voted different than me. And I realized the game real quick was that, oh, this is how they do it. They try to get one half the country looking at the other half of the country as their enemy instead of their neighbor. And my neighbor's not my enemy. And my neighbor is the person who's suffering under the same oligarchy and Zionist influence that I'm suffering under. And they want us to hate each other. So because if we realize we had more in common that divides us, we would come together because we have a common enemy. And that common enemy is the oligarchy. And they can't have that. So that's why you see all this stuff is happening. And, you know, there's more psyop. We live in one giant psyop is what I feel like. And
That's a great point. Imagine if they had convinced me and Ro Khanna that we hate each other so much that we couldn't work on the Epstein Files Transparency Act together.
Right.
But once we did, we had the biggest press conferences Washington, D.C. has seen in decades. And we did 2 of them with the survivors of the Epstein sex trafficking ring. And some of those survivors are Republicans, some are Democrat. They didn't care what our political affiliation was. And then when we got it to the floor, it was 427-1 in the House was the vote and 100-0 in the Senate. If they had convinced people this was a partisan exercise by the time it got to the floor, which is why I tried to keep it from being about Bill Clinton or about Donald Trump. That was part of the psyop. Let's make it about Bill Clinton, and then we can keep the Democrats afraid of the files. Let's make it about Donald Trump, and then we can keep the Republicans afraid of it. And then we can make the vote, 1 to 427 instead of 427 to 1 by getting both sides to hate each other or to hate this bill for political reasons. So you've got a great point. Maybe you don't need to vote. Maybe we don't need new people there. Maybe we just need to convince them they don't all hate each other as much as they're being told. And part of the reason they act at least like they hate each other is their voters tell them to hate each other. Like, I won't vote for you again if I see you, shaking hands with AOC. That's the kiss of death in your primary or whatever. So I think that's a hopeful, tone to say, once you realize you don't hate the other person all the time, okay, you can hate them 80% of the time, but at least acknowledge there's 20% of the time you don't have to hate them, and then you could get something done together.
As Frederick Douglass said, I'll join with anyone to do right and no one to do wrong. So that's what I live by. That's the message of this show. And so I join with you on many things, free speech, bodily autonomy, anti-war, get donor corporate money out, the whole deal. I'm with you on so many things that could really change this country. And then I would love to have it's like almost a luxury to be able to fight over bathrooms and think and think that to me, but right now we got a lot of big problems and they want us distracted. And I try to tell people, don't take the bait, don't fall for it. Your neighbor's not your enemy. Your neighbor's an American who wants the same things you do. And that's the message they don't want to get out. And I think that's the message that you carry. And so I have a real soft spot for you. And I think a lot of people do. I've always considered myself a lefty, but I have no trouble supporting someone like you. And I should tell people, you're up against the Zionist money in your primary. So they should go to thomasmassie.com/donate. Go to thomasmassie.com/donate, become one of those $80 donators, and fight against the oligarchy that way.
Hey, I got caught in the hallway by somebody who thought they was going to get one over on me, and they said, "Why don't you become a Democrat? When are you switching to Democrat?" And I said, "Didn't you know I vote with the Republican Party 91% of the time, but in the 9% of the time they're covering up for pedophiles, bankrupting the country, or starting another war. I ain't voting Republican. I'm not with the party that day." And somebody sent me a $15 donation with a note attached. Now, my treasurer, he's the one who's going through the mail and putting the checks in. He said, "I think you need to see this note," and he sent it to me. And the guy repeated my quote, and he said, "This is for the 9% of the time. Here's $15."
I saw that video. That guy thought he really had you, and you smacked him down pretty easily. That was nice. Well done. Thomas Massie, thank you so much for your time. Thanks for your courage. Thanks for standing up to the powerful and being a voice for the people who don't have a voice. You're welcome back on the show anytime.
Thanks, Jimmy. It's been on my bucket list. I'm glad that we got to do this, and I'll be looking forward to coming back on.
Okay. Thank you, pal. All right. Over to Steph. We'll be right back.
Okay. Here we go, ladies and gentlemen. That was a terrific interview. So glad Thomas Massie was able to check this off his bucket list. Are you kidding? I think it was on our bucket list, too. Really terrific to see him today. That was a real great conversation. If you didn't catch it all, I'm sure our team will be editing those clips. And, we don't want the unknown, decline unknown. All right, here we go. Let's cover a couple of these super chats that we started with today. No capitalism, it's global mafia are the problems. And that's from your, thank you, your. Next one. Please tell Thomas Massie thank you. Okay, we certainly will. Appreciate that. Stand by. Where'd that one go? Okay, next. Why didn't you put a private right of action into the legislation? Much better than an amicus brief. Mambar. Oh, you know what? Thank you for that. That sounds like such an interesting and insightful question. We don't really get to the questions from the chat that often to interject into the prepped questions that we've worked on. So that's how it rolls. Thank you, Mambar. Plasma has rated the stream. Thank you, Plasma. This is the best day in Jimmy Dore show history. Jadir. Thank you, Jadir. Trump, I have nothing to hide. Epstein files, cracks knuckles, Jen. Shah wasn't installed in 53. He was already in power in 41. He left the country for 3 weeks in 53 after his fallout with the Prime Minister Mossadegh. CIA and M16 overthrew Mossadegh while he was away. Then Shah returned. And that's from my girl, Linda. Bam, Linda. Massie, we love you. Keep fighting for justice. From Jen. Thanks, Jen. Because she'd have to fly in on her broom. Jen, I think that's regarding Clinton's and the subpoena. Who do you trust more, Dan Bongino or Pam Bondino? A. Barnes. That's so hard to choose from. Oh, from A. Barnes. Hold on, A. Where's my bell? The real Epstein is Mark R. Epstein in telecommunications with Bill Gates at MIT. Right, Palantir? Oh, A. Barnes. Sticking it to somebody. Finally, Thomas Massie. Yay, the shadow Carl. It hasn't happened because our government is a bunch of corrupt pedophile shitbags. Greg, nicely stated. All right, they certainly do look like a bunch of shitbags. Thomas Massie for president. Max Murphy. Massie 2020. You know, it would be fun if Massie could call in as Trump. He did some fun work today, I think. That was from W. The real villains are not Bill Clinton and Donald Trump. Give me a fucking break. That's from Jen. What's the average price the Rothschilds have to pay to buy a politician? A. Barnes coming in strong today. Hey, did you see the Bears game yesterday? Whew.
That was real. That was a
little heartbreak.
That was a real heartbreak.
Little heartbreak. I didn't watch the whole thing. I came down I think the fourth quarter and then overtime. Whoa.
The Bears should have won that game.
Ooh.
I can't believe they didn't.
Tight. Yeah, that was.
They definitely should have won that. I can't believe he threw that interception. It was.
Yeah. Oh,
that was crazy.
interception. He had, and just before that, the pass that he made was amazing.
The best pass of his career and the worst pass of his career.
Oh, that's painful.
Okay.
All right, back to Jim.
Hey, something important is happening right now, and most people haven't noticed yet. One of the largest financial institutions in the world, Bank of America, is openly discussing a scenario where gold could reach levels near $5,000 per ounce by the end of 2026, while silver could move into triple-digit pricing based on long-term market factors. That kind of conversation doesn't happen casually. Rising government debt, persistent inflation pressures, growing global demand for physical metals, and increasing concerns about currencies that can be created at will. When major institutions start framing gold and silver this way, it signals a broader shift taking place. That's why many Americans are choosing to learn more through monetary gold. For more than 25 years, they've helped people understand physical gold and silver, whether held directly or as a part of a long-term financial planning. No pressure, no hype, just clear information and real people you can talk to. If you want to understand why gold and silver are getting this level of attention and see what options are available, now is a smart time to get informed. Visit jimmylovesgold.com or call 800-476-7790 to request their complimentary gold guide. Because when the conversation starts at this level, paying attention early matters.
Wow, paying attention.
It is amazing what has happened. I mean, I never invested in gold, never even thought about it. And until Paul explained to me about how the value of the dollar is going down, and if they keep printing $1 trillion every 3 months, and what that does to the value of the dollar and why things cost. And I'm like, what? And so I bought some gold for my retirement with IRA money, whatever. Now it's gone up 50% since I bought it. So I'm not giving anybody investment advice. I'm just telling you what happened to me. And of course, you don't want to put all your eggs in one basket either. We got other things. I still buy, the interest rate on Treasury bills is high, and which is not good in a sense for the country. But it's good if you want to buy Treasury bills. But anyway, I'm the last guy. I don't want to get talking about finances and Wall Street and stuff like that. But I don't know. Banks are buying gold. Gold is going through the thing. I say get informed. I say get informed. Look into it. Get informed. And shop around. All right. Over to Steph.
Okay. Thank you, Jimmy. All right. I'm just going to wait for your cue, Misha, to tell me to do what I need to do. But I'm going to, I'm going to do this to the best of my ability, Misha, because I think you have faith in me. All right. Here we go. I read that one. We have a nation of criminal syndicates run by Jesuits, Freemasons, and Shabbat Jews. Fearless rose in USA. The Freemasons, I don't know what I was reading or watching that they said that our founding forefathers, this has all just been about Freemasons and their own private wars with each other. Is that true? Say it again. Oh, I know. How did I bring that up? Okay, I have to chime in. You were both completely wrong about the food pyramid. 4 out of the 7 people on the panel that decided it were from that decided it were from the meat and dairy industry. RFK is a fraud. Oh, above the hype.
Whoa.
Sticking it to the man.
Well, what do you I think that food pyramid is 100% better than the old food pyramid.
Yeah, I'm also.
There's certainly an improvement.
Right.
But,
and then we just learned a little fun fact this weekend that cottage cheese has protein. I know a lot of you are like, I knew that. Oh,
I didn't know it.
All of you who know things more than me, you beat me every time. Every time. I am ignorant of so many things in the world, but I do know how to pronounce Erdogan. How about you? Are you an Erdogan? All right, great interview. Kuznetsky. Thank you, Kuznetsky. Massie is the most honest member of Congress at this point. His constituents are lucky to have an actual representation in federal government. Warden Word, thank you. Could someone ask Massie why the Epstein bill recommends no punishment for non-compliance? Government of Israel, interesting. Oh, okay. Let me do these two. Join Hinkle's party, the ACP, before Jimmy's live show in Hollywood. We'll be at Barney's Beanery, 10-minute walk from the show, discussing Epstein, Venezuela, Iran, and never-ending election of John McCain to the White House. And that is from Brick by Brick.
Who's that? Jackson Winky?
Bam. And Jimmy, Trump did not get shot. It was WWE faked. And that's from Willem Ellick. Ladies and gentlemen, this
Okay, a guy died.
Yes, a guy died. But
so what?
Oh, I see what you're saying. That was fake. I got you on that one.
They're shooting real bullets. Like, you know, the whole thing was set up that he dodged at the last minute and they planned it for that. Okay, that just seems less likely than there's two factions of deep state that are underneath one shadow government to me. But I guess go with that one if you want, buddy.
I like it. And with that, we're going to go to Rumble, girls. See you there.